began the day I brought Flight 59 into Kansas City, Missouri from New York. My flight in had been routine, and after we made sure that everything was okay, I left the plane with my crew. Oh, by the way, my name's Martin, Pete Martin. I'm an airline captain, and that's me walking on the right. I went to the ready room with my co-pilot to see if there were any letters for me. Most of them were bills and advertisements, but one interested me particularly. It came from a man I'd never heard of. I was in a hurry and I didn't open it, thinking I'd read it later. I didn't get to it until that night, just as my wife was putting the kids to bed. Good night, Bill. Sleep tight.
Good night, Daddy.
Good night, Laura. Be a good girl.
Good night, Daddy. Mother, can I sleep with Raggedy Ann?
I think so, dear.
Well, the letter surprised me. It was from a passenger who'd once flown with me. He wrote telling me he'd enjoyed the experience. Wondered if I'd write him telling him how a big airline operated. I'm not a good correspondent, but anyhow, I decided to answer him. First, I told him I was the wrong man to write. I'm just one of a team, sir, I wrote. A team of thousands of people, each one of them contributing to every flight. I remember your flight, and I'd like to tell you a few of the things that make a big commercial airline work. Maybe that'll help explain what I mean. I'll take my line, for instance. We fly from the Pacific coast eastward across the United States, all the way to Bombay, India, 32,000 miles. We cover 60 U.S. cities, 4 continents, and 17 countries overseas. We were first with regular coast-to-coast flights in the United States, first in over-weather flying, pioneers and de-icers, automatic pilots and radar. I could go on, but that'll give you an idea. Your flight from Los Angeles, California to New York showed airline teamwork and coordination. You telephoned for your ticket from your home in Los Angeles. Our office received your order, made sure that the flight you wanted was open, and sold you a ticket. Your order went to the message center and immediately was teletyped to our reservations service in Kansas City, where my crew would take over for the rest of the trip to New York. Every ticket is cleared here, giving a complete picture at all times. 10 minutes after you'd ordered your ticket, your name was on its correct flight listing. You were all ready. You called for your ticket 2 days later at our Los Angeles office. Altogether, a pretty painless business. On your departure day, you checked in at the airport. Everything was ready. Your luggage checked aboard. Your traveling comfort in the hands of a smooth working team. That's a fine plane, that Constellation you flew in. They built her at Lockheed Aircraft in Burbank, California, using the engineering and production techniques that have made us successful in aviation. The Constellation is very costly. And once you've seen her come together at Lockheed, you know why. She winds up over 95 feet long, with a wingspan of 123 feet, with 10,000 horsepower, more than enough to pull 4 average railway trains. She weighs 107,000 pounds loaded. When she's finished, we pilots think we've got the slickest ship in the air. Before we ever see her, she's put through a series of exhaustive tests. Every part of her, from nose to tail, gets this treatment. The reason is a word we live by in the airline business. That word is safety. Well, that's the story of your airplane. Now to get back to your flight. You got off on schedule and headed for Kansas City, 5 hours and 10 minutes away. Your pilot and I were old friends. After a couple of hours aloft, you had luncheon. And I think you'll agree with me that the meal compared very favorably with that served by a good restaurant anywhere. Which brings up the food story, one we're pretty proud of. We've done a lot of pioneering here, too. In our Kansas City test kitchen, we're always working on recipes, procedures, and equipment, giving food for thought to food for flying. Although we have 6 food units around the country from which plane service is delivered, our production kitchen in Kansas City cooks all the meats, potatoes, and desserts for the line. 75% of the food used in our coast-to-coast feeding is prepared here. 5 tons of food a week, 2.5 million meals a year. These pre-cooked meals are kept in perfect condition in huge refrigerators until they are ready for distribution by air to the line's 6 outlying food units. Each unit restores its own food in special ovens. Refrigeration enables us to prepare our food well in advance, yet a meal processed by our system is served as hot and fresh as when it was cooked. Some really neat and efficient containers have been designed for food and drink. Light in weight, that's essential, but sturdy as well as compact. In other words, built for flying. When a plane lands, one of the first things we do is to remove the used service and put in the fresh service, whether it be another meal, a snack, or simply a beverage. Well, sir, with your meal over, you had a chance to look at the scenery. It's pretty spectacular on that Los Angeles to Kansas City run, particularly the Grand Canyon of the Colorado. You know, this letter worries me a little. Are you getting enough behind-the-scenes stuff? I'll try to put down some inside information. Now, let's see. Did you know it takes the company several years to train a captain or co-pilot? A year or more for other crew members? And that brings up another story, the training story. In Kansas City, we run a regular school for captains, first officers, and flight engineers. We not only teach new personnel how to fly for us, but keep our old employees abreast of new developments that are always popping up in aviation. One of the things that makes our business kind of fascinating. We take 3 physical examinations a year, 2 government, 1 company. And this constant checking up goes for training, too. Once you get started, it never stops. Every 6 months, we get an instrument check, blind flying. And there are regular line checks. Our pilots have logged 1 million hours, but these standards are never relaxed. Now for our crew, the crew that picks you up at Kansas City, all fresh and rested, ready for the trip to New York. I'm captain. 18,000 hours flying with a line. Been flying since 1933. There's my co-pilot. The flight engineer and our hostesses, 2 good girls. So much for us.